I still remember the exact moment everything changed. I was standing in the bathroom of the Grand Hyatt, scrubbing at a red wine stain on my rented bridesmaid dress with a wad of wet paper towels, and my phone buzzed with a news alert I almost swiped away without looking. The headline was long and boring, the kind of thing I usually scrolled past without a second thought. But my eyes caught on one word. My grandfather's name. Su Guodong. After 2 decades in hiding, Hotel Tycn Su Guodong's Rong chain valued at over 10 billion, poised for comeback. ISTA read at the screen. The photo showed my grandfather sitting by a window, looking sharp and distinguished in a simple grey jacket, with none of the frailty he always pretended to have when I visited him in the countryside. His eyes were clear, his posture straight. He looked exactly like what he was. A man who had built an empire and then walked away from it to raise me in a quiet little town. I almost laughed. Right there, with my reflection sta ring back at me in the hotel bathroom mirror, we ring a dress I'd rented for $80 RS because I couldn't afford to buy one, with mascara smudged under my eyes from the crying I'd done in the stall 3 minutes. Liar, I almost laughed. Zhou Huayan, my fiancé of 5 years, had just dumped me. No. Not dumped. That would imply he had the decency to end things properly. What he did was worse. He pulled me aside during our wedding rehearsal, right in front of both our families, and told me I was embarrassing him. He said Lin Yutong was different. She could give him the life he wanted. She was standing out there in her custom-made designer dress, accepting congratulations from guests who had no idea she was the other woman. She'd been the other woman for months. I found the texts. I found the receipts. I found everything, and I said nothing, because I thought maybe if I was patient enough, understanding enough, he would remember the 5 years we'd spent together. The years I'd worked 2 jobs so he could start his business. The years I'd believed in him when no one else would. He didn't remember. He didn't see Su Wan, just go quietly, he'd said, his voice low and urgent, his hand gripping my arm hard enough to leave bruises I'd see later. Don't make a scene. Please. For old time's sake. Old time's sake. I almost choked on those words. I'd walked away, found the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and cried until I couldn't breathe. Then I'd washed my face, reapplied my makeup poorly, and discovered the wine stain on my dress. The dress that was already too tight across the shoulders and too long in the hem. The dress I'd picked because it was the only one in my size that didn't look completely terrible, even though it made me look like I was playing dress-up in someone else's life. Now I was standing at the sink, watching the stain spread from dark red to pink to a muddy nothing, and my phone was telling me that my grandfather, the quiet old man who spent his days tending tomatoes in his backyard and calling me every Sunday to ask if I'd eaten well, was a billionaire. The door swung open. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. The clack of expensive heels on tile was unmistakable. Lin Yutong. She stopped a few feet away, arms crossed, head tilted in that way that made her look like she was examining something mildly unpleasant she'd found on the bottom of her shoe. The same way she'd looked at me when Zhou Huayan introduced us 2 years ago, as if I were an unfortunate stain he hadn't quite managed to wash out of his life. Su Wan. Her voice was sweet, almost syrupy. I was wondering where you'd gone. I didn't answer. I kept scrubbing at the stain, even though I knew it was hopeless. The paper towel was disintegrating in my hand, leaving little white flecks on the cheap fabric. Look, I'm going to say this nicely because I'm feeling generous today, she continued, stepping closer. You need to leave. Quietly. No drama. No crying scenes. Just walk out the back door and don't come back. I finally turned to face her. She was wearing a champagne-colored gown that probably cost more than I'd spent on groceries in the last 3 years. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was perfect. She was perfect, and she knew it. She knew she'd won, and she wanted me to know it too. I'm not going to make a scene, I said. My voice came out steadier than I expected. I'd been crying for 20 minutes, but something had shifted inside me. Something cold and hard and quiet. But I'm not leaving quietly either. Her smile faltered for just a second. Then she laughed. What are you going to do? Tell everyone you think anyone's going to believe the poor orphan girl over me, over my family? Please, Su-won. You're a nobody from nowhere. You don't have any power here. You don't have any leverage. You're just a girl who got lucky for a few years and now the luck's run out. She was right about the luck part, anyway. I'd been lucky to have Zhou Huayan choose me back when we were both broke and desperate. I'd been lucky he'd stuck around long enough to make something of himself. I'd been lucky that his success had given me a place to belong, even if that place was always conditional, always temporary, always one wrong move away from being taken away. But she was wrong about everything else. I did have power. I just didn't know how to use it yet. Move out of my way, I said. I need to get back to the ballroom. No. She stepped in front of me, blocking the door. I'm serious, Su-won. If you go out there and cause problems for Huayan, I'll make sure you regret it. I have connections. I can make your life very difficult. You don't want to be on my bad side. I looked at her. Just looked. She was beautiful, yes, but there was something brittle about her. Something desperate behind all that confidence. She wasn't just defending her relationship. She was defending her turf. Her status. Her place in the social hierarchy that she'd been born into and I'd never had a chance of reaching. I'm not going to cause problems, I said. I'm going to take my things and go. But not because you told me to. Because I want to. I pushed past her toward the door. She reached for my arm, just like she had outside the bathroom 5 minutes ago. Her manicured fingers closed around my elbow, hard enough to hurt, and she yanked me back. Road, don't be so self-righteous. You think you're better than me? You're nothing. You've always been nothing. The only reason Huayan stayed with you as long as he did was because he felt sorry for you. I was about to pull free, to say something cutting, something that would wipe that smug expression off her face, when the bathroom door swung open. Road, it happened so fast I barely had time to register it. Lin Yutong was still holding my arm, her body angled toward me, and she'd been leaning back on her heels in that aggressive way she had. When the door pushed inward, she lost her balance. Her hand flew off my arm and she stumbled backward, directly into the person who just walked in. She hit him chest first. Her lips, glossy and perfect, SMEA read right across his jaw. For one frozen second, no one moved. Lin Yutong was pressed against a man in an immaculate charcoal gray suit. Her hands were splayed on his chest. His arms had come up instinctively to steady her, his fingers just brushing her waist. And then everything happened at once. Lin Yutong shoved away from him like he was on fire. Her face had gone from pale pink to a deep, mortified red. What? Who? She sputtered, and then she looked up at him and the words died in her throat. He was tall. Impossibly tall, with broad shoulders that filled out his suit jacket perfectly. His features were sharp and clean, the kind of face you'd expect to see on a magazine cover, not walking through a hotel bathroom. His hair was dark and slightly tousled, like he'd been running his fingers through it. And his eyes were the kind of gray that looks almost silver in certain light, cold and appraising and not at all impressed by the woman he just accidentally kissed. I knew who he was. Everyone in the business world knew who he was. Liu Yanji, the heir to the Liu Group, recently returned from Yaris abroad to take over the family empire. He was a legend in the making, the kind of man other men whispered about in boardrooms and women talked about in hushed tones at charity galas. Zhou Huayan had been trying to get his attention for months. A handshake. A meeting. A single sentence that might lead to a partnership. He'd never come close. And now Lin Yutong, the woman who just called me nothing, was standing in front of him with her lipstick SMEA red across his jaw like a brand. I'm so sorry, she gasped, fumbling in her tiny clutch for a tissue. I didn't see, I wasn't, here, let me, she reached up to wipe his face. He stepped back, just be a rely, just enough to make it clear her touch was not welcome. Then he did something that surprised me. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a crisp white handkerchief, and held it out. Not to Lin Yutong. To me. Your dress is stained, he said. His voice was low and smooth, with no hint of the awkwardness that should have come from being accosted in a hotel bathroom. You might want to fix that before you go back out. Ista read at the handkerchief. Then at his face. He was looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, something between recognition and curiosity. Thank you, I said, and I took it. My fingers brushed his. His skin was warm. His eyes stayed on mine for a moment longer than they should have, and then he turned and walked away, leaving Lin Yutong sputtering in his wake. The door swung shut. Lin Yutong spun on me, her composure completely shattered. Who was that? How do you know him? Su Wan, what the hell is going on? How to re you, he walked in on you falling, I interrupted. That's all. I don't know him. I've never met him in my life. I folded the handkerchief carefully and tucked it into my purse. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a wedding rehearsal to attend. I walked out before she could say another word. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I kept my step steady, my chin up. When I reached the ballroom, the rehearsal was still going. Zhou Huayan was on stage with Lin Yutong's parents, laughing at something her father had said. He looked happy. He looked triumphant. He looked like a man who'd gotten exactly what he wanted and had no idea that the floor was about to drop out from under him. I walked right up to him. Everyone in the room went quiet. The wedding planner, the few EARLY guests, the catering staff who were setting up for the dinner later that night. All eyes on me. Su Wan, Zhou Huayan hissed, his smile freezing on his face. What are you doing? I told you to wait, we're done, I said. My voice right across the room, clear and steady. The engagement is off. I'm not going to rryu, Zhou Huayan. He read at me. His face went through about 7 emotions in 2 seconds. Disbelief. Anger. Panic. What are you talking about? Don't be ridiculous. We talked about this. No, I said. You talked. I listened. But I'm done listening. I turned to face the small crowd that had gathered. This man is not who you think he is. And I am not who he thinks I am. But I'm done pretending. Lin Yutong came running into the ballroom, her face flushed, her composure rely intact. Huayan. What's going on? I told her to leave. I don't know what she's doing. Zhou Huayan reached for me, his hand closing around my wrist. Che Road. He pulled me close, his voice dropping to a savage whisper. Su Wan. Don't do this. Don't embarrass me in front of everyone. If you walk out now, I swear to God, I'll make sure you regret it. You don't have any money, you don't have any connections, you're nothing without me. I should have been afraid. I should have been hurt. But all I felt was a strange, clean calm, like the air after a thunderstorm. I looked at him, this man I'd loved for half a decade, and I felt nothing. You're wrong, I said. I'm not nothing. And you're about to find out exactly what I am. I tried to pull my wrist free. He held on tighter, his fingers digging into my skin. Don't walk away from me, Su Wan. I'm warning you. Let her go. The voice came from behind me. Low and calm, with an edge of cold steel underneath. I turned my head and saw him standing there, the man from the bathroom. Lu Yanji. He'd followed me in somehow, and now he was moving forward, his eyes fixed on Zhou Huayan's hand on my wrist. Who the hell are you? Zhou Huayan demanded, and then he saw the man's face. All the color drained out of his. Mr. Lu, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize you were here, you're hurting her, Lu Yanji said. Let her go. Now. Zhou Huayan's hand dropped from my wrist like I'd burned him. I'm sorry, he stammered. I didn't mean, we were just having a private conversation. We're done, I said again. I rubbed my wrist, where red marks were already forming. Completely done. Lu Yenji glanced at me, his expression unreadable. Then he said, I'll drive you home. I blinked. What, the car, he repeated. I'll drive you. It's getting late. He said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like we were old friends, not strangers who just met in a hotel bathroom 5 minutes ago. Zhou Huayan looked like he was going to have a heart attack. Mr. Lu, I don't think, were you? Lu Yenji raised one eyebrow. He looked bored. Dismissive. The way you'd look at a gnat buzzing around your head. It didn't sound like that to me. He turned away from Zhou Huayan and looked at me. Coming. I didn't hesitate. I nodded, picked up the cheap clutch I'd left on a NEARBY table, and walked beside him out of the ballroom. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see Zhou Huayan's face. I didn't want to see Lin Yutong's. I just wanted to be out of that room, out of that dress, out of that life. We walked through the hotel lobby in silence. The bellhop held the door for us. A sleek black car was waiting at the curb, and Lu Yenji opened the passenger door for me. I got in without a word, and when he slid into the driver's seat, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. He didn't start the car right away. He just sat there for a moment, his hands resting on the steering wheel, and then he looked at me with those strange silver gray eyes. You don't remember me, do you? He said. That I read at him. What are you talking about? I've never met you before in my life. 10 years ago, he said. At the Rong Hotel. You were visiting your grandfather. I was in the kitchen, stealing cake from the pastry chef. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. I was wearing a uniform that was 3 sizes too big, and I had icing all over my face. Your grandfather's head chef was about to call the police, and you let me go out the back door. I read at him. The memory was dim, half buried beneath years of other memories. But now, as I looked at his face, I root to see it. The boy he'd been. The red kid who'd grabbed a piece of cake from the kitchen because he was hungry. I'd snuck him out through the kitchen door and given him my ice cream. That was you, I whispered. Me, he confirmed. And I've been looking for you ever since. The car hummed softly as we pulled away from the hotel. The city lights blurred past, streaks of gold and white against the dark windshield. I was still holding Lu Yenji's handkerchief in my lap, crumpled and damp from the wine stain I'd been trying to scrub out. I didn't know what to say. 10 years since I'd handed a scrawny, frightened boy my ice cream and told him to run. 10 years since I'd thought about that moment at all. And now that boy had grown into this man, this stranger who'd just driven me away from my ruined engagement as if it were the most casual thing in the world. You're lying, I finally said. You can't be the same person. I can't, he glanced at me, one eyebrow raised. Why not? Because that boy was terrified. He had cake on his face and he looked like he hadn't eaten a proper meal in weeks. I shook my head. You're a Lu. The Lu. Everyone knows who you are. I wasn't always a Lu, he said quietly. Not in the way you mean. The car slowed to a stop at a red light. He turned to look at me properly, and there was something almost vulnerable in his expression, a crack in that polished, unreadable facade. That my mother married into the family when I was 12. Before that, I was just a kid from a broken home who spent most of his time stealing food from hotel kitchens because the people who were supposed to take care of him forgot to feed him. He said it simply, without self-pity, like he was reciting someone else's history. Your grandfather's hotel was the first place I ever felt safe. Your grandfather was the first person who ever looked at me like I mattered. I remembered that day more clearly now. The boy had been hiding behind a stack of flour bags, his eyes wide and red, crumbs all over his too big uniform. The head chef was yelling, threatening to call the police, and then this little girl in a sundress had walked up to him, taken his hand, and led him out the kitchen door. What happened after? I asked. After you left, your grandfather found me. Not that day, but a few weeks later. I'd gone back to the hotel because I didn't have anywhere else to go, and he pulled me aside and asked me what was wrong. I told him everything. He took me in, helped me get cleaned up, made sure I had food and clothes and a bed to sleep in. Lu Yenji's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He called my mother's new husband. Talked to him. Convinced him to give me a chance. He said, this boy has potential. Don't waste him. He paused. When he spoke again, his voice was rougher. I never forgot that. I never forgot him. And I never forgot the little girl who gave me her ice cream. The light turned green. He drove on, and I read at his profile in the dim glow of the dashboard RD lights. All these years, I'd thought no one remembered. I'd thought that summer was just a blip, a few weeks of running around my grandfather's hotel while he taught me about the business. I'd thought I was the only one who ride those memories. I looked for you, I said. When I went back to the hotel the next summer, you weren't there. I asked the staff if they'd seen you. No one knew who I was talking about. I left the city, he said. My mother's husband had a business opportunity abroad. He took us with him. I spent the next few years in Europe, getting my education, learning the ropes of the family business. I came back every year, though. To visit your grandfather. Just to check in. He glanced at me, a quick, sideways look. And to see if you were there. I didn't know what to say to that. Something was blooming in my chest, something I hadn't felt in a long time. It felt almost like hope, and that read me more than anything else. I was there, I said. Every summer. Until I turned 18 and went to university. I know. He smiled, a small, almost shy smile. I used to watch you sometimes. From a distance. You'd be in the den with your grandfather, or you'd be running errands in the town. I never approached you. I thought it would be weird. This random guy showing up and saying, hey, remember me? I'm the kid who stole cake from your grandpa's kitchen. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The sound surprised me, raw and unguay-ride, and it made Lu Yenji smile even wider. You could have said hi. I told him that I was terrified, he admitted. You seemed so put together. So sure of yourself. And I was just a confused kid trying to figure out who I was supposed to be. I shook my head. I wasn't put together at all. I was a mess. I just hid it better. Is that what you were doing tonight? He asked. Hiding. I thought about the ballroom. About Zhou Huayan's cold eyes and Lin Yutong's sneer. About the cheap dress and the bad makeup and the way I'd felt like I was drowning in front of everyone. Tonight, I wasn't hiding, I said. Tonight, I fell apart in front of everyone. Did you see me? I was a disaster. I had wine on my dress and mascara on my cheeks. I looked like a raccoon that had been through a car wash. You looked like someone who was fighting, he said simply. And I thought you were beautiful. I didn't know what to do with that. No one had ever called me beautiful before. Pretty, maybe. Cute, if they were being generous. But beautiful, that was a word for women like Lin Yutong. Women who had the right clothes and the right hair and the right families. I'm not beautiful, I said. I'm ordinary. I've always been ordinary. That's why Zhou Huayan, Lu Yenji said, and his voice went cold again, is an idiot. He never saw you for who you really are. And that's his loss. Not yours. We pulled into the parking lot of my apartment building. It wasn't much. A cramped old high-rise in a part of town that was slowly gentrifying but hadn't quite gotten there yet. The lights in the hallway were always flickering, and the elevator broke more often than it worked. Lu Yenji parked the car and turned to look at the building. His expression was fully neutral, but I could see something in his eyes. Disappointment, maybe. Or pity. I couldn't tell which. This is where you live, he asked. It's fine, I said. It's just a place to sleep. I don't spend much time here anyway. With Zhou Huayan, I shook my head. He has his own place. He never wanted to live with me. Said he needed space for his work. I should have known what that meant. Lu Yenji was quiet for a moment. Then he said, you don't have to stay here. Your grandfather would never. My grandfather doesn't know, I interrupted. He thinks I'm living in a nice apartment with a nice fiancé who treats me well. I didn't want him to worry. He's going to find out. Tonight's rehearsal was full of people. Word is going to get around. I know. I sighed and pressed my fingers to my temples. I know. But I just need tonight to think. To process. I can't deal with my grandfather right now. He'll be so disappointed in me. He told me Zhou Huayan was no good. He warned me. And I didn't listen. Lu Yenji reached over and gently pulled my hand away from my face. His fingers were warm and steady, and when I looked up, his gray eyes were locked on mine. Your grandfather is never disappointed in you, he said softly. He loves you more than anything. He told me that every time I visited. My Su Wan, he'd say. She's going to do something amazing someday. You just wait. My throat tightened. I blinked hard against the sudden sting of TRS. How long have you been seeing him? I asked. Visiting him every year. Since I was 12. I don't always stay long. An afternoon, maybe a day. We just talk. He tells me about his tomatoes. About the town. About you. Lu Yenji smiled again. He always talks about you. He's so proud of you, Su Wan. Even when you didn't see it. I had to look away. My eyes were burning, and I knew if I kept looking at him, I'd start crying, and I'd already done enough crying for one night. Thank you, I said, my voice small. For tonight. For everything. You didn't have to do this. You didn't have to help me. I wanted to, he said. I've wanted to help you for a long time. I just never had the chance. There was something in the way he said it that made my heart skip. I pulled my hand away from his, and he let it go without protest. Your handkerchief, I said, holding it out. I should return it. Keep it, he said. You can give it back to me next time. Next time. The words hung in the air between us. Next time, I repeated. I'm not leaving you to deal with this alone, he said. I know you're strong. I know you can handle yourself. But you don't have to. Your grandfather asked me to watch out for you, and I'm going to do it. Whether you like it or not. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him I didn't need anyone's help, that I'd been taking care of myself for years and I was fine, that I was perfectly capable of sorting out my own messes. But I was tired. So tired. And part of me, the part I'd been trying to silence for years, wanted to let someone else why the wait for just a little while. I'll think about it, I said. About letting you help. But I need to figure things out on my own first. I need to understand what my life looks like now. Without Zhou Huayan. Without everything I thought I was. He nodded slowly. I understand. But Su Wan, don't disappear. If you need anything at all, call me. He pulled out his phone and handed it to me. Put your number in. I did. My fingers were shaking just a little as I typed, and when I handed the phone back, our hands brushed again. I felt it like a jolt of electricity. Good night, Su Wan, he said. Good night, Lu Yenji. I got out of the car. The night air was CL and clean, and I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, watching his car pull away. When it disappeared around the corner, I turned and walked into my building. The elevator was broken, so I took the stairs. Up 6 flights, with my cheap heels in my hand and the scrap of a handkerchief still clutched in my fist. I unlocked my apartment door and stepped inside, and the weight of everything that had happened came crashing down on me. I sat on my couch, surrounded by the boxes I'd already route packing, and I cried. Not the quiet, measured tears I'd shed in the hotel bathroom. Ugly, messy, body-shaking sobs that came from somewhere deep in my chest. I cried for the 5 years I'd wasted. I cried for the girl I used to be, the one who believed in love and trust and happy endings. I cried because I was terrified of what came next. When I finally stopped, I pulled out my phone. The news alert was still there. I read at my grandfather's face, at the photo of him looking so strong and sure, and I felt something click into place. I wasn't the same person I'd been this morning. That Soo-won had been a shadow. A placeholder. A girl who didn't know her own worth. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I didn't know what I was becoming, but I knew one thing for sure, that I was never going to be invisible again. That I opened my messages and typed a quick note to my grandfather. Call you tomorrow. Love you. His response came within seconds. Always proud of you, my Soo-won. Sleep well. I smiled through the TRS, and for the first time that night, I felt like maybe everything was going to be okay. I woke up to sunlight streaming through my threadbare curtains and the sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand. For a beautiful, blissful second, I forgot everything. Then the memories hit me like a wave. The rehearsal. The wine stain. Zhou Huayan's cold eyes. Lin Yutong's smirk. And Lu Yenji. That silver-eyed stranger who'd somehow become my unexpected savior. I grabbed my phone. 18 missed calls from Zhou Huayan. 23 text messages. I scrolled through them without opening any of them. The first few were angry. The middle ones were desperate. The last ones were pathetic, begging me to come back, to give him another chance, to let him explain. I deleted them all without reading a single one all the way through. Then I blocked his number. I was done explaining. Done giving chances. Done being the one who always tried harder. There was also a message from an unknown number. I opened it. Good morning. I hope you slept well. I'm taking your grandfather to breakfast this morning. If you'd like to join us, I can pick you up at 9. No pressure. Just a thought. Lu Yenji. I checked the time. 8:47 a.m. I'd slept through my alarm. I scrambled out of bed, tripped over a half-packed box of books, and nearly face-planted onto the floor. My reflection in the mirror was a horror show. Smudged mascara, puffy eyes, hair that looked like I'd been electrocuted in my sleep. I looked exactly like what I was. A woman who'd had the worst night of her life and then cried herself to sleep. I ran to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, and tried to make myself presentable in under 10 minutes. It wasn't pretty. I pulled on the least wrinkled pair of jeans I could find and a clean sweater. No makeup. My face was already too puffy for that to help anyway. At exactly 9 o'clock, my phone buzzed again. I'm downstairs. I grabbed my keys and ran. When I burst through the front door of my building, Lu Yenji was standing by his car. He was wearing a casual dark jacket and jeans, and he looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine spread. There was no sign of the polished businessman from last night. He looked younger, like this. Approachable. Almost normal. Morning, he said, his eyes scanning my face. You look tired. Thanks for the honesty, I muttered. I feel like I got hit by a truck. Your grandfather's going to be relieved to see you, he said, opening the passenger door. He's been worried. He doesn't know yet, does he, about last night? Lu Yenji shook his head. I thought it should come from you. But he's not stupid. He knows something happened. He called me this morning before the sun was even up. I winced. What did you tell him? Nothing. I told him I'd bring you to breakfast and you could tell him yourself. He held the door open, and I slid into the car. Su-won, whatever you decide to tell him, he's going to support you. I promise. I didn't believe him. Not really. My grandfather had always been my rock, but he was also the one who'd warned me about Zhou Huayan from the very beginning. He'd seen something in him that I'd refused to see, and I'd been too stubborn to listen. I'd chosen Zhou Huayan over my grandfather's advice. And now I had to face the consequences. The restaurant was a small, unpretentious place near the water. My grandfather was already seated at a corner booth, a pot of tea steaming in front of him. He looked up when we walked in, and his face broke into the warmest smile I'd ever seen. Su-won, he said, reaching for my hand as I slid into the booth across from him. You look like you've been through the ringer, my girl. What happened? The words stuck in my throat. I couldn't get them out. I sat there, gripping my teacup, and the TRSSTA root welling up again. He happened, Lu Yenji said quietly, sliding in next to me. He chose someone else. At the rehearsal. My grandfather's expression didn't change. He didn't look surprised. He just looked sad, like he'd been expecting this for a long time. I saw it coming, he said finally. I didn't want to believe it, but I saw it. That boy was never good enough for you, Su-won. You just couldn't see it. Then why didn't you tell me? I burst out. Why didn't you just say something? I would have listened. No, you wouldn't have. He shook his head gently. I know you, sweetheart. You had to figure it out on your own. If I'd pushed, you'd have only dug your heels in deeper. I had to let you make your own mistakes. But I was always here. Always ready to catch you when you fell. A tear slipped down my cheek. I wiped it away quickly, but my grandfather had already seen. He reached across the table and took my hand. Now, he said, squeezing my fingers. Tell me everything. From the beginning. And I did. I told him about the texts I'd found, about the months of suspicion and doubt, about the way Zhou Huayan had looked at me like I was a piece of furniture he was finally getting rid of. I told him about the wine stain and the bathroom and Lin Yutong's sneer. I told him about Lu Yenji showing up like a ghost from the past. My grandfather listened without interrupting. When I finished, he sat back and looked at Lu Yenji. You were there, he asked. You saw what happened. I saw enough, Lu Yenji said. I saw a man who didn't deserve what he had. And I saw a woman who deserved a lot better. My grandfather nodded slowly. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed. It was a rumbling laugh that turned heads at NEARBY tables. You always did pick your moments, didn't you, boy, he said to Lu Yenji. I've known you for 10 years of watching you come visit me like clockwork. 10 years of listening to you ask about Su-won, ruefully, like you were trying not to give anything away. He looked at me, his eyes twinkling. You know, sweetheart, this one's been in love with you for a long time. He just never had the courage to say it. I felt my cheeks flush. Grandpa, what? I'm just telling the truth. The boy has been walking around with a torch for you since he was 12 years old. I figured you should know. Lu Yenji had gone very still beside me. His ears were red. I caught his eye, and he gave me a quick, almost helpless shrug. That's not entirely accurate, he said ruefully. I mean, I thought you were. He stopped, took a breath, and root again. Your grandfather is being overly generous. But he's not entirely wrong. I've always had a lot of respect for you, Su-won. Admiration, too. And I'd like to get to know you better. If you're open to it. Not right now, obviously. You just went through something really difficult. But eventually. When you're ready. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This man, this impossibly handsome, impossibly wealthy man who could have anyone in the world, was telling me he wanted to get to know me. Me. The girl who'd just been publicly dumped by a man who was clear RLY beneath her. I don't understand, I said. Why would you want anything to do with me? I'm a mess. I have no money, no career, no future. I just spent 5 years with someone who didn't even like me. How is that attractive? Lu Yenji looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, quietly, do you know what I saw when I walked into that bathroom last night? A woman crying into a paper towel. I saw someone who had every reason to give up. Someone who'd been treated terribly and had every right to break. But you didn't break. You stood up to that woman. You walked out of that ballroom with your head high. You didn't let them win. He leaned in, just a little. That's strength, Su Wan. Real strength. And that's the most attractive thing in the world. Ista read at him, my heart pounding. Beside me, my grandfather took a sip of his tea and hid a smile behind his cup. Well, he said, setting the cup down. I think that settles it. Su Wan, you're coming back to work with me. I've been running the hotel for years on my own, but I'm getting old. It's time Ista root handing things over. Grandpa, you can't just, I can, he said firmly. And I am. The hotel chain is yours whenever you want it. I was going to wait until you were ready, but I think you're ready now. I think you've been ready for a long time. You just needed someone to believe in you. I opened my mouth to argue, to tell him I wasn't ready, I wasn't qualified, I didn't know anything about running a business. But the look on his face stopped me. He was proud. So proud, looking at me with those warm old eyes, like I was the best thing he'd ever done. Okay, I said softly. I'll try. That's my girl. The rest of breakfast passed in a blur. Lu Yenji and my grandfather talked about the hotel business, about expansion plans and brand strategies, and I listened, trying to absorb as much as I could. I was going to need to learn fast. By the time we finished eating, my head was spinning. After breakfast, we stepped out onto the street. My grandfather gave me a long hug, his arms thin but strong around my shoulders. You're going to be fine, he whispered into my hair. Better than fine. You're going to be extraordinary. I hugged him back, not trusting myself to speak. Then he shook Lu Yenji's hand, said something quietly in his ear, and walked away with his driver. I watched him go until he disappeared around the corner. He's a remarkable man, Lu Yenji said, coming to stand beside me. Your grandfather. He taught me everything I know. He taught me too, I said. I just didn't listen well enough. You're listening now. That's what matters. I turned to look at him. The morning sun was bright behind him, casting him in a golden glow. He looked like something out of a dream. Why are you helping me? I asked. I know you said you admired me, but we really know each other. You could be spending your time on anything. Anyone. Why me? He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because I've been waiting for this moment since I was 12 years old. And I'm not going to waste it. I didn't know what to say to that. There were no words that felt adequate. So I just nodded, and when he asked if I wanted to take a walk along the water, I said yes. We walked for an hour, talking about nothing and everything. He asked me about my life, about what I liked and what I wanted to do now that I was free. I told him about my dreams of opening a small boutique hotel, something personal and charming, a place where people would feel like they were coming home. That sounds like a beautiful vision, he said. I'd like to help you make it real. You don't have to, I want to, he said, and there was something in his voice that made me believe him. By the time we got back to his car, I felt lighter than I had in months. Not because my problems were solved, but because for the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone. My phone buzzed as I was getting into the car. I looked at the screen. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Su Wan. It was Lin Yutong. She sounded different from last night. Sharper. Angrier. I need to talk to you. Right now. I don't have anything to say to you, I said, and I meant it, then just listen. Her voice cracked. Whatever you're planning, whatever you're doing with Lu Yanji, just stop. You don't know what you're getting into. He's not what you think he is. And if you keep this up, you're going to destroy everything. I looked at Lu Yanji, who was watching me with concern. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the truth. Lin Yutong's voice dropped, conspiratorial. The truth about who you really are. I did some digging last night. I found out about your grandfather. About the hotel chain. I know everything, Su Wan. And I'm going to make sure everyone else knows too. My blood went cold. But then something else came over me. A calm, steady certainty that, go ahead, I said. Tell everyone. I don't see anymore. Let them know who I am. Let them know I was never the nobody you thought I was. It won't change anything. It won't make you any less of a ya-are. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but I felt oddly free. Let her talk. Let her spread her lies. I was done hiding that. Everything okay? Lu Yanji asked. Everything's fine, I said. And for the first time, I meant it. Let's go home. The week that followed was a blur of meetings and phone calls and fully worded emails. My grandfather moved faster than I'd ever seen him move. Within days, he'd arranged for me to meet with the executive team at Rong, the senior managers who'd been running the hotel chain in his absence. They were a mixed bunch. Some were warm and welcoming. Others looked at me like I was a child playing dress-up in her mother's clothes. I didn't let it bother me. I couldn't afford to. Lu Yanji was there through all of it. He didn't hover, didn't try to take over, but he was always present. A quiet presence in the corner of the conference room. A reassuring text before a difficult meeting. A cup of coffee waiting for me on my desk in the mornings. I didn't know how he'd gotten access to my office, but I didn't ask. I was too grateful to question it. The news about my grandfather's empire spread fast. It always did. Within 48 hours of my first BOA RD meeting, every business publication in the city had run the story. Hotel heiress emerges from obscurity to take over billion-dollar AR chain. Su Guodong's granddaughter steps out of the shadows. The headlines were dramatic, exaggerated, and almost entirely accurate. And then the internet found me. Zhou Huayan had been smart enough to stay quiet. He'd gone to ground after the Rihie Risal, probably 2 EMBA Rast and 2 SCA Red to show his face. But Lin Yutong was not smart. She was vindictive. And she was desperate. The first post Ape read on a gossip forum late on Wednesday night. An anonymous user with a brand new account wrote a long, detailed expose about a gold-digging social climber who'd allegedly tricked an innocent businessman into an engagement, then left him for a richer man the moment the opportunity arose. The post didn't use my name, but it didn't need to. Anyone who'd been at the Rihie Risal knew who they were talking about. I read it on my phone, lying in bed, and I felt my stomach drop. The comments were savage. People I'd never met were calling me a fraud, a tramp. They were defending Zhou Huayan, of all people, painting him as the victim of my scheming. A few people pushed back, asked for evidence, but they were quickly drowned out by the mob. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just set the phone down and read at the ceiling for a long time. The next morning, Lu Yanji found me in my office, hunched over my laptop, reading the comments with a kind of morbid fascination. Don't, he said, closing the laptop gently. Don't do that to yourself. I need to know what people are saying, I said. If I'm going to run this company, I need to know how the public perceives me. The public doesn't know you. And people who read anonymous gossip forums are not the public. They're trolls. They're bored people with too much time on their hands. He pulled up a chair and sat across from me. What Lin Yutong is doing is not journalism. It's harassment. And we can stop it. How? Legally. He pulled out his phone and root typing. My lawyers are already working on it. We can have the post removed within the hour. But that's a temporary fix. The real solution is to get ahead of the story. To tell your truth before anyone else can tell their version of it. I looked at him. What do you mean, an interview? He said. A profile piece. A major publication, someone reputable. You tell your story, and you let the world see who you really are. Not the woman in those posts. The real you. I wanted to say no. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to hide, to wait for the storm to pass, to disappear until everyone forgot about me. But something had changed in me. Something that had been growing since the night of the rehearsal. I was tired of hiding. Tired of letting other people define me. Okay, I said. Set it up. The interview was scheduled for the following Monday. In the meantime, I had to survive the weekend. My grandfather invited me to his house for dinner on Saturday, and when I arrived, I found Lu Yenji already there, helping him in the den. They were talking about something, laughing together like old friends, and I watched them from the kitchen window with a strange, feeling in my chest. Dinner was simple. My grandfather Ked, and Lu Yenji and I set the table and washed the dishes. It felt almost normal. Like we were a real family, not three people thrown together by circumstance and secrets. After dinner, my grandfather went to bed and Lu Yenji and I sat on the back porch, looking out at the den. The stars were out, bright and clear and the night was quiet. How are you feeling? He asked. About the interview, terrified, I admitted. But also, relieved. I think. I've been hiding for so long. Pretending to be something I'm not. It's exhausting. You don't have to pretend anymore, he said. Not with me. Not with anyone who matters. I turned to look at him. In the dim light of the porch, his face was all shadows and planes. He was so handsome it almost hurt to look at him. But it wasn't his face that made my heart ache. It was the way he looked at me. Like I was someone worth protecting. Why are you so good to me? I asked softly. I still don't understand it. I'm not special. I'm not rich or powerful. I'm just me. He smiled, a slow, gentle smile. That's exactly why. You're just you. That's all I've ever wanted. He leaned in. I didn't move. Our foreheads were almost touching, and I could feel the warmth of his breath on my skin. And then, so softly I almost didn't hear it, he said, "Can I kiss you?" I nodded, because I didn't trust my voice. And then his lips met mine, and the world fell away. The kiss was soft at first. Tender. Like he was afraid I might break. But then I reached up and touched his face, and something shifted. The kiss deepened, became more urgent, more real. His hands found my waist, pulling me closer, and I felt like I was falling into something wonderful and terrifying. We pulled apart, breathless. His eyes were dark in the low light, his hair mussed, his expression dazed. Wow, I said. Wow, he agreed. And then we both laughed. It was awkward and nervous and wonderful, and I felt lighter than I had in years. The interview went better than I expected. The journalist was a woman in her 40s, sharp-eyed and no nonsense, and she asked me hard questions. About my childhood. About Zhou Huayan. About the rumors Lin Yutong had been spreading. I answered them all honestly, without flinching. When the interview was published, it ran under the headline, Su Wan, the heiress who chose herself. It was accompanied by a photo of me in my office, looking confident and composed. I'd worn a simple white blouse and minimal makeup, and I looked like someone who knew exactly who she was. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Women wrote to me, hundreds of them, sharing their own stories of leaving bad relationships and finding their own way. The gossip forum post was taken down. Lin Yutong went silent. Zhou Huayan's company sta route hemorrhaging clients, and his name disappeared read from the society pages. I didn't gloat. I didn't even feel triumphant. I just felt at peace. For the first time in as long as I could remember, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The weeks that followed were some of the busiest of my life. The hotel chain was in the middle of a major restructuring, and I was determined to get it right. I spent long hours at the office, learning everything I could about the business. Lu Yenji was there, too, helping me navigate the complicated world of corporate negotiations and stakeholder management. And we were together. Not officially, not yet. But everyone knew. The way he looked at me across conference tables. The way he'd find excuses to touch my hand, my shoulder, my back. The way he'd wait for me after meetings, just to walk me to my car. One night, after a particularly brutal negotiation session, he came to my office. I was slumped over my desk, exhausted, surrounded by stacks of papers. He didn't say anything. He just took my hand, pulled me to my feet, and led me to the car. Where are we going? I asked. Somewhere you can relax, he said. I'm taking you away for the weekend. You need a break. But I have work, it'll be there when you get back. You need to sleep. You need to eat. You need to remember what it feels like to be a person, not just a sea. I didn't argue. I was too tired to argue. And when he drove me to a small, secluded resort by the sea, I felt the tension start to drain out of me. We spent the weekend walking on the beach, eating seafood, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about his childhood in Europe, about how he'd always felt like a stranger in his own family. I told him about my parents, about losing them young, about the loneliness I'd ride for so long. You're not alone anymore, he said, as we sat on the sand watching the sunset. You'll never be alone again. I promise. I leaned into him. He put his arm around me, and we sat like that, watching the sky turn purple and gold and pink. I love you, I said. The words slipped out before I could stop them. I froze, waiting for his reaction. But he just turned to me, his eyes soft and I know, he said. I love you too. I've loved you since I was 12 years old. I laughed, a watery, happy laugh. That's a long time to be in love with someone you really knew. I knew enough, he said. I knew you were kind. I knew you were brave. I knew you were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And I was right. He kissed me then, deep and thorough, and I kissed him back. It was the most perfect moment of my life. When we returned to the city on Sunday night, I felt like a different person. Renewed. Ready for whatever came next. And then, on Monday morning, Zhou Huayan showed up at my office. He looked terrible. His suit was rumpled, his eyes were bloodshot, and he'd clearly lost weight. He'd been kicked out of his company, he wrote. His investors had all pulled out. He was a pariah in the business world. And he'd come to me, the woman he'd thrown away, to beg for help. Su Wan, he said, his voice cracking. Please. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I treated you terribly. But I'm desperate. I have nothing left. My family is ruined. My career is over. I don't know what else to do. I looked at him. This man who'd broken my heart. This man who'd made me feel worthless and small. And I felt nothing. No anger. No pity. Just a quiet, final peace. I can't help you, Zhou Huayan, I said. Not because I'm cruel. Not because I'm angry. But because helping you would mean sacrificing myself. And I'm done doing that. He fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. I called security. Two guards came and gently escorted him out. I watched him go, and I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Lu Yenji came into my office a few minutes later. Are you okay? He asked. I'm fine, I said. And I was. I was more than fine. I was freed. Good, he said. Because your grandfather just called. He wants to have dinner with us tonight. Both of us. He says it's time to talk about the future. I smiled. The future. I like the sound of that. He reached for my hand, and I let him take it. Our fingers intertwined. I looked down at our joined hands, at the man who'd been waiting for me for 10 years, and I knew that everything was going to be okay. Eating dinner at my grandfather's house was a quiet affair. Just the three of us, seated around the same worn wooden table where I'd eaten countless meals as a child. The food was simple. His famous braised pork belly, stir-fried vegetables, a bowl of steaming soup. The kind of meal that tasted like love. My grandfather had an air of ceremony about him tonight. He'd put on a pressed shirt instead of his usual cardigan, and he kept glancing at me and Lu Yenji with a look I couldn't quite decipher. Expectant. Proud. A little bit mischievous. So, he said, setting down his chopsticks, I suppose you're wondering why I asked you both here. You said you wanted to talk about the future, I said cautiously. What kind of future? He leaned back in his chair and folded his hands over his stomach. The kind where I don't have to worry about you anymore. The kind where I can finally retire in peace, knowing my business is in good hands and my granddaughter is happy. Grandpa, you don't have to retire. The hotel is doing fine because I've been running it for 40 years, he interrupted gently. And I'm tired, Su-won. I'm old. I want to spend my days tending my tomatoes and taking naps and maybe, if I'm lucky, playing with my great-grandchildren someday. I felt my cheeks flush. Lu Yenji, beside me, was very carefully not looking at either of us. That's a long way off, I muttered. Is it? My grandfather raised an eyebrow. I may be old, but I'm not blind. I see the way you two look at each other. I see how he takes care of you. I see how you light up when he walks into the room. He smiled, warm and genuine. I've waited a long time for this, Su-won. 10 years, actually. Ever since that boy first showed up on my doorstep asking about you. Lu Yenji finally spoke, his voice quiet but steady. Mr. Su, I know I'm not the kind of man you probably imagined for your granddaughter. I have baggage. My family is complicated. I didn't grow up with the same advantages she did, my boy, my grandfather interrupted, I don't worry about any of that. I worry about one thing. Do you love her? Yes, Lu Yenji said, without hesitation. I've loved her since I was 12 years old. I'll love her until I'm old and gray and can't remember my own name. My grandfather nodded slowly. Then he turned to me. And you, Su-won, what do you want? I looked at Lu Yenji. At the man who'd rescued me from the worst night of my life and stayed by my side ever since. At the boy who'd come back year after year, just to catch a glimpse of the girl who'd given him an ice cream duck. I want him, I said. I want this life. I want to build something real with him, something that lasts. My grandfather beamed. Then that's settled. I'm giving you both a wedding present. The hotel chain is yours, officially. Not just the management. The ownership. I'm transferring everything to you, Su-won. Every shari, every property, every penny. I opened my mouth to argue, but he held up a hand. No protests. I've made up my mind. It's time for the next generation to take over. And I can't think of anyone I'd trust more than you and that boy sitting next to you. I didn't know what to say. Tears were streaming down my face, and I couldn't seem to stop them. Lu Yenji reached for my hand under the table, and I squeezed it tightly. Thank you, Grandpa, I whispered. He reached across the table and patted my cheek, his hand warm and calloused. You've made me so proud, Su-won. From the moment you were born, you were the best thing I ever did. And I know your parents would be proud too. We talked late into the night, making plans, dreaming about the future. By the time Lu Yenji and I finally left, the moon was high and the air was ciel and crisp. We walked to his car in silence, but it was a comfortable silence. The kind that didn't need to be filled. Your grandfather is a remarkable man, he said finally, as we got into the car. He is, I agreed. He's always been my rock. When my parents died, he didn't let me fall apart. He held me together, even when he was falling apart himself. I can see where you get your strength from. I looked at him. In the dim light of the car, his profile was sharp and beautiful. You make me feel strong, too, I said. When I'm with you, I feel like I can do anything. He turned to look at me, and his eyes were warm. You can do anything, he said. I've always known that. He leaned in and kissed me, soft and slow, and I let myself get lost in it. The world outside the car faded away. There was only him, only us, only this moment. The wedding was small and intimate, exactly what I wanted. We held it at my grandfather's favorite hotel, the one where it had all sta route. The same kitchen where I'd found a red little boys stealing cake. The same den where I'd spent countless afternoons reading and dreaming. The same ballroom where, months ago, I'd been humiliated and abandoned. But today, the ballroom was filled with flowers. White roses and soft pink peonies, my grandmother's favorites. I walked down the aisle in a simple ivory dress, nothing like the cheap rented gown I'd worn to that disastrous rehearsal. This dress was mine. This life was mine. Everything I had, Ida Rened. Lu Yenji was waiting for me at the altar. He looked devastatingly handsome in a charcoal suit, his silver-gray eyes fixed on me like I was the only person in the world. When I reached him, he took my hand and whispered, "You're beautiful." "So are you," I whispered back. The ceremony was short and sweet. My grandfather officiated, which made me cry before I even got to the vows. We'd written our own, and when I read mine, I saw tears in Lu Yenji's eyes too. I promise to love you not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. I promise to choose you every single day, even when I'm tired or frustrated or red. I promise to be your partner, your confidant, and your safe place. And I promise to never, ever forget that you're the best thing that ever happened to me. He kissed me before I was even finished, pulling me close, and our guests erupted into cheers and applause. The reception was a blur of dancing and laughter and joy. My grandfather sat in a place of honor, a glass of champagne in his hand, watching me and Lu Yenji with a smile that never left his face. His friends from the old days came up to congratulate him, and he told them all the same thing: I knew she'd do something amazing someday. I always knew. Late in the evening, after most of the guests had gone home, Lu Yenji and I stole away to the roof of the hotel. The city glittered below us, a million lights twinkling in the dark. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, and I leaned back into him, the warmth of his body chasing away the CL night air. Can you believe it? I asked. A year ago, I was nothing. I was nobody. And now I'm here, with you, with everything I ever wanted. You were never nothing, he said, his voice soft against my ear, you just didn't know it yet. I turned in his arms to face him. What do we do now? We have the hotel, we have each other. What's next? Whatever we want, he said. We can travel. We can build new hotels. We can adopt a dozen dogs and a cat and maybe even a parrot if you want. Not a parrot, I laughed. They're too loud. Fine. No parrot. But everything else is negotiable. I smiled up at him. I don't need a dozen dogs. I just need you. He kissed me then, deep and thorough, and I kissed him back with everything I had. The city below us hummed with its own quiet music, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely, utterly at peace. The next year was the happiest of my life. We traveled to Europe, to the places where Lu Yenji had grown up. We stayed in small villages and big cities, ate food we couldn't pronounce, and got lost in streets that had no signs. He taught me to ride a bike, and I taught him to dance. We fought about silly things and made up over even sillier things. We learned each other's quirks and habits, the little things that made us who we were. And then, one morning, I woke up feeling sick. I brushed it off at first, blamed it on something I'd eaten. But when it happened again the next day, Lu Yenji insisted I see a doctor. I'll never forget the look on his face when I told him the news. We were sitting in our kitchen, the morning sun streaming through the windows, and I was holding a small plastic stick with 2 pink lines. What does that mean? He asked, his voice rely above a whispered, it means we're going to have a baby, I said. He read at me for a long moment. Then his face broke into the biggest, brightest smile I'd ever seen. He swept me up into his arms, spinning me around the kitchen, laughing and crying at the same time. A baby, he kept saying. A baby. Our baby. I laughed too, dizzy and happy and so full of love I thought my heart might burst. The pregnancy was not easy. There were complications, months of worry, more than a few sleepless nights. But Lu Yenji never left my side. He held my hand through every appointment, brought me soup when I was too tired to move, and talked to my belly in the dark, whispering promises to our unborn child. When our daughter was born, I held her in my arms and looked at her tiny face, her little fingers curled around my thumb, and I wept. The nurse placed her on my chest, and she was so warm, so real, so impossibly perfect. Hi, Suga I whispered. Welcome to the world. Lu Yenji was beside me, his face wet with tears, reaching out to gently touch the baby's cheek. She's beautiful, he breathed. She looks like you. She has your nose, I said. She has your strength, he replied. We named her Tang Tang. Because, Lu Yenji said, she was the sweetest thing that had ever happened to him. And because, I added, her mother had once used an ice cream to change a life. My grandfather met her within the hour. He held her in his arms, his old hands trembling with emotion, and he told her stories about her great-grandmother and the hotel and the summer that had changed everything. You're going to be just like your mother, he said. Strong. Kind. Brave. The best thing I ever did. Tang Tang grew quickly, as babies do. She had her father's eyes and my stubbornness, and she was fearless from the moment she could crawl. She loved the hotel, loved running through the halls and exploring the kitchens, just like I had at her age. My grandfather visited often. He'd sit in the garden with her on his lap, telling her about the old days, about the time he'd opened his first hotel and how red he'd been. But I did it anyway, he'd say. And so will you. Because that's what we do in this family. We just keep going. Those years were golden. Full and warm and bright. I had everything I'd ever wanted. A family. A purpose. A partner who loved me without reservation. A future that stretched out before me like a promise. And then, on a quiet Tuesday in autumn, my grandfather passed away. He died peacefully in his sleep, in his own bed, in the house where he'd raised me. The doctor said he'd simply run out of time. That his heart had been tired for a long time and it had finally decided to rest. I held his hand at the funeral and I didn't cry. I couldn't. I was too full of grief to find the tears. Lu Yenji stood beside me, his arm round my shoulder, and when I finally broke down, he held me until I had nothing left. The funeral was small, just the way he would have wanted. He was buried next to my grandmother, in a quiet cemetery overlooking the town where he'd grown up. I planted flowers on his grave, the same kind he'd grown in his garden, and I told him about Tang Tang's first word and Lu Yenji's promotion and the new hotel we were opening in his name. I miss you, Grandpa, I said. I miss you every single day. But I'm okay. I'm more than okay. Because you gave me the tools to be strong. You gave me the foundation. Everything I am, I owe to you. Tang Tang tugged at my sleeve, her small face serious. Mama, is great-grandpa in heaven? Yes, sweet I said. He's in heaven. And he's watching over us. Will he come back? No, baby. But he'll always be with us, in our hearts. She nodded, accepting it with the simple faith of a child. And then she ran off to chase a butterfly, her laughter bright against the quiet of the cemetery. Lu Yenji took my hand. She's just like you, he said. Brave, I agreed. Just like her father. He smiled, and we stood there together, watching our daughter play in the sun, surrounded by the love of family past and present. The hotel chain flourished. We opened 3 new properties in the years that followed, each one a tribute to my grandfather's vision. The flagship hotel, the one where it all began, we renamed the Su. It became a destination, a place where people from all over the world came to experience a piece of his legacy. Tang Tang grew up in that hotel, running through its halls and learning its secrets. She would sit in Boa RD meetings with me, a serious little girl with a notebook and a pen, taking notes on things she couldn't possibly understand. She would ask Lu Yenji endless questions about the business, about the guests, about the housekeepers and the chefs and the bellhops. One day, she told me, "I'm going to run this hotel. Just like you and great-grandpa." "I know you will," I said. "And you'll be even better at it than us." She looked up at me, her father's eyes bright in her small face. "Promise?" "I promise." We didn't have any more children. Tang Tang was enough, more than enough. She was our everything, our heart, our future. On Tang Tang's 10th birthday, we threw a party in the ballroom of the Su. The same ballroom where, 12 years ago, I'd worn a cheap dress and been humiliated in front of everyone. Now it was filled with children and laughter and balloons, and my daughter was the center of it all. Lu Yenji stood beside me as she blew out her candles. "She's growing up so fast," he said. "Too fast," I agreed. "Are you happy, Su Wan?" I turned to look at him. He was still the same man I'd met all those years ago. A little grayer at the temples, a little softer around the edges, but still the boy who'd stolen cake from my grandfather's kitchen. Still the man who'd waited 10 years for me. "I'm the happiest I've ever been," I said. He kissed me, right there in the middle of the party, and our daughter groaned and covered her eyes. "Ew," she said. "Gross." But she was smiling. They were both smiling. And so was I. My grandfather once told me that life was like a hotel. People come and go. Some stay for a night, some for a lifetime. But the ones who matter are the ones who leave a mark. The ones who change the room just by being in it. He'd left his mark on me. He'd left it on Lu Yenji. He'd left it on this hotel, on this city, on this family. And we would see ARRY at 4-way RD, generation after generation. Because that's what we do. We just keep going. And we never, ever forget the people who got us there.